Honorable members, the prayer. Lord, the God of righteousness and truth, grant to our Queen and to our government, to members of the Legislative Assembly, and to all in positions of responsibility, the guidance of your Spirit. May they never lead the province wrongly through love of power, desire to please, or unworthy ideas, but laying aside all private interest and prejudice, keep in mind their responsibility to seek to improve the condition of all. Orders of the day, orders du jour.
Government motions. Motion number 91, Honourable Mr. Nixon.
The Honourable Minister of Justice on behalf of the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf of the Government House Leader to move Government Motion 91, and it reads as follows. Be it resolved that when further consideration of Bill 56, Local Measures Statutes Amendment Act 2021 is resumed, not more than 1 hour shall be allotted to any further consideration of the bill in third reading, at which time every question necessary for the disposal of the bill at this stage shall be put forthwith.
Honourable members, Government Motion 91 is debatable pursuant to Standing Order 21.3. Are there any wishing to provide comment? The Honourable Member for Calgary-McCall, the official opposition Deputy House Leader, has up to 5 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's unfortunate that we are starting the morning with a motion that will curtail the debate on a very important piece of legislation. And what motion says that whenever Bill 56 is back in the legislature for debate, the debate be limited to 1 hour, and at that time all questions should be put before the House. But the thing is that on this important piece of legislation, we have asked this government many questions. Municipalities across this province has raised many questions. Calgary has raised many questions. In particular, Calgary is facing really tough times where over 30% of the downtown is vacant. When this government is asked about that, their response is that filling downtown towers is not their responsibility. And with this bill, they are even cutting MSI grants, municipal grants, municipal sustainability initiative grants further. We had many answers that how these cuts will impact the future of Calgary downtown, the future of Calgary Green Line. And here we are, where government is bringing forward this motion that will cut down debate on those important questions. I think that's very heavy-handed. That's undemocratic. The government is just trying to do everything they can with their majority to shut down the debate. And no wonder this government is not interested in providing any answer, and they are getting national awards about secrecy. They refuse to answer Albertans' questions. They refuse to answer opposition questions. And now they are least trusted in the entire Canada. I think we will be opposing this motion. We will be opposing any time allocation motion because this government has not answered the questions that they should be answering. When they are asked about who they have consulted, they have not answered that question. Every mayor, from big cities to small municipalities, they have raised concern about that. And what they have been doing, they have been offloading costs onto the municipalities without providing any answers how they will impact the residents, the constituents in those municipalities. I think it's an undemocratic, heavy-handed tactic that shouldn't be lightly deployed here. But for this government, I think that's the go-to every time they want to ram through some legislation. Through this legislature, they will use time allocation. I don't think that we will agree with those kind of things. We will do everything we can to stop this government. If not, I think people of Alberta will stop them at some point. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, having heard the motion as proposed by the Honourable the Minister of Justice on behalf of the Honourable the Government House Leader, for Government Motion 91, all those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. No. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered, and a division has been called. Call in the members. many do you have? How many do you have, Sean? Set. Honorable members, a division has been called on Government Motion 91. All those in favor of the motion and in the chamber, please rise.
Honorable Mr. Madu, Honorable Minister LaGrange, Mr. Turton, Honorable Mr. Wilson, Mr. Getson, Mr. Singh, Honorable Ms. Pond, Mr. Ellis, Ms. Goodrich, Honorable Mr. Luan, Mr. Yao, Mr. Orr, Ms. Glasgow, Ms. Rosen, Mrs. Allard, Mr. Walker, Mr. Rosewell, Mr. Williams, Mr. Guthrie, Honorable Mr. Schweitzer, Honorable Mr. Glubish.
All those opposed to Government Motion 91, please rise and present in the chamber.
Mr. Sabir, Mr. Diol, Mr. Billis, Mr. Egan, Ms. Sweet, Ms. Goring, Mr. Shepherd.
Honorable members, we will now turn to our remote vote. Those members who have joined us online are reminded that we will do the roll call alphabetically. Please only state for or against. When your name is called, turn your microphone on, state clearly and loudly your intention, and remute your microphone upon completion. After the roll call is finished, I will invite any members who did not have their name called to state their intention. The clerk.
Honorable Mrs. Zahir.
In favor.
Mr. Amory.
In favor.
Ms. Armstrong Hominack.
In favor.
Ms. Furr.
In favor.
Mr. Gottfried.
In favor.
Mr. Hanson.
In favor.
Mr. Horner.
In favor.
Ms. Isaac.
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Panda.
In favor.
Don't see his camera. Mr. Steffen.
In favor.
Mr. Van Dyken.
Honorable Member Minister Panda, can you please restate your intention and ensure that your camera is on? Here he is.
Can you see me and hear me all right, Mr. Speaker?
You're good now, sir.
I said I'm not opposed, I'm in favor.
Please state only in favor or against. And we also had a challenge with Member Van Dyken. I'm not sure if you are able to state your intention in favor or opposed. Honorable members, are there others who have joined us online who did not have their name called? Clerk, please.
Mr. Speaker, total for the motion 31, total against 7.
Honourable members, that motion is carried and so ordered.
Government motion number 92, Honourable Mr. Nixon.
The Honourable Minister of Justice, Solicitor General, and the Deputy Government House Leader on behalf of the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf of the Government House Leader to move Government Motion 92. Be it resolved that when further consideration of Bill 58, Freedom to Care Act, is resumed, not more than 1 hour shall be allotted to any further consideration of the bill in Committee of the Whole, at which time every question necessary for the disposal of the bill at this stage shall be put forthwith.
58. The Honourable Minister of Justice, Solicitor General, Deputy Government House Leader has moved Government Motion 92. This is a debatable motion. Member of the Opposition has up to 5 minutes pursuant to Standing Order 21-3. And I see the Honourable Member for Edmonton Castle Downs has risen. She has up to 5 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House this morning to express absolute opposition to time allocation when it comes to debating Bill 58. We've been in this chamber to discuss this bill. And I think when we talk about the numbers that this is going to impact, I think it needs to be on the record that there are more than 26,400 nonprofit organizations in Alberta. That's 26,400 organizations that should have say in what is happening with this piece of legislation. We have more than 1.6 million Albertans that provide 262 million volunteer hours. That's 1.6 million Albertans that are going to be impacted by this legislation that this government is putting time allocation on that don't get their voice heard. We have continued to put amendments forward, and we've heard from the minister that just moved time allocation say things such as, there's good reason for this wording to be in the legislation. And that's it. No explanation about why this is good wording. All we heard further to that was ranting about the NDP, not talking about the legislation that is going to impact more than 1.6 million Albertans. When I've consulted on this piece of legislation, the majority of the nonprofit sector and volunteers in this province had zero say about the impact that this would have on them being able to be a volunteer in our province. We know that Albertans take pride in the ability to be a volunteer, to provide service to other Albertans, and this legislation is putting staff, volunteers, and everyday Albertans at risk because of these decisions that are being made in this legislation. This piece of legislation also impacts every single ministry because there is an allowable portion of this that allows an exemption. And it's not specific to nonprofits. It's an exemption that's allowable to every single ministry that this government represents. None of our amendments have been approved. To limit debate on this piece of legislation that has an impact for so many Albertans across our province that want to be able to give back and want to be able to provide service to those that are in need, especially in a pandemic, is shameful. We stand up for Albertans in this House. We do not see the government doing the same. What we see right now is them saying, no, we're not talking about it anymore. We've proposed amendments. We've heard nothing about why the amendment shouldn't be approved. Just ranting about the NDP from a minister that continuously says this is partisan. This is something that impacts more than 1.6 million Albertans. Having time allocation is absolutely undemocratic. Individuals should have a voice. We should be able to thoroughly review this piece of legislation. We know that the nonprofit sector is an economic driver in this province. We also know that this is not a priority of this government. We see it right now because they're putting time allocation to stop debate on this bill. We've seen it in the drastic cuts that they've given to community organizations. They've been pleading with this government to be at the table, to have a voice. In this chamber, we have the ability to debate issues. I think this piece of legislation and the impact that it has and the amount of compassion and understanding and just genuine desire to care and help and support is being completely disregarded by this government. They don't want to hear from average, everyday Albertans. They don't want to hear about the impact that this legislation is going to have on the volunteers across this province, on the nonprofit sector. 1.6 million Albertans are volunteers. And this legislation doesn't deal with just those volunteers. It is sweeping legislation that has the ability to provide exemptions to every single ministry in this chamber. And with that, I would suggest that we oppose this time allocation. Thank you.
Honourable members, the Minister of Justice, Solicitor General and Deputy Government House Leader, on behalf of the Honourable Government House Leader, has moved Government Motion 92. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered, and a division has been called. Call in the members. Wait. Honorable members, a division has been called on Government Motion 92 as proposed by the Government House Leader and moved on his behalf by the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General. All those in the chamber and in favor, please rise.
Honorable Mr. Madu, Honorable Minister LaGrange, Mr. Turton, Honorable Mr. Wilson, Mr. Getson, Mr. Singh, Honorable Ms. Pond, Mr. Ellis, Honorable Mrs. Sawney, Ms. Goodrich, Honorable Mr. Luan, Mr. Yao, Mr. Orr, Ms. Glasgow, Ms. Rosen, Mrs. Allard, Mr. Walker, Mr. Rosewell, Mr. Guthrie, Mr. Stephan, Mr. Williams, Honorable Mr. Glubish.
Honorable members, all those opposed and present in the chamber, please rise.
Mr. Sabir, Mr. Diol, Mr. Billis, Mr. Egan, Ms. Sweet, Ms. Goring, Mr. Shepherd.
Members, we will now proceed to the members who have joined us remotely. We will do a roll call by last name in alphabetical order. Please ensure your microphones are on mute until your name is called, at which point you will unmute your microphone, state only for or against, and then remute your microphone. At the completion of the roll call, I will ensure that there are no other members who have been unable to join us or who have not had their name called. The clerk.
Honorable Mrs. Zahir,
In favor.
Mr. Amory,
In favor.
Ms. Armstrong Hominack,
In favor.
Ms. Furr,
In favor.
Mr. Gottfried,
In favor.
Mr. Hanson,
In favor.
Mr. Horner,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Hunter,
In favor.
Ms. Isaac,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Panda,
In favor.
Mr. Tour.
In favor.
Honorable members, are there any of those joining us remotely who have not had their name called who wish to intend to vote? Do.
Mr. Speaker, total for the motion 33, total against 7.
Motion is carried and so ordered.
Motion number 89, Honorable Mr. Nixon.
The Honorable Deputy Government House Leader on behalf of the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf of the Government House Leader to move Government Motion 89. It reads as follows. Be it resolved that when further consideration of Bill 70, COVID-19 Related Measures Act is resumed, not more than 1 hour shall be allotted to any further consideration of the bill in Committee of the Whole, at which time every question necessary for the disposal of this bill at this stage shall be put forthwith.
Honorable members, the Deputy Government House Leader on behalf of the Government House Leader has moved Government Motion 89. It is a debatable motion pursuant to Standing Order 23.1. Member of the Opposition has up to 5 minutes to respond. The member for Edmonton Northwest.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise here this morning to oppose this motion to invoke closure on debate in regards to Bill 70. And, you know, we've spoken on Bill 70 quite a lot in this House, and the more we talk about it, the more questions that come forward, not just for the members here, but for the public as well. And this whole notion that we would remove or reduce the amount of legal protections that people that are using long-term care facilities here in the province during a COVID pandemic is absolutely appalling, both optically and realistically too. Because you know the law, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't just offer recourse for compensation and so forth as well. It acts as a way to monitor and deter behavior, negative behavior. And if you relax the legal protections that individuals have, then you're leaving the door open for more potential problems from these large companies, especially that run these long-term care and assisted living facilities. And so this whole notion, I mean, it sort of smelled bad from the beginning, and it's only gotten worse over these last number of weeks when we've been debating this. And I know that there's other members in this chamber that feel the same way. Absolutely. We know that it's very difficult to sell this to your constituents because almost everyone has long-term care, assisted living facilities and so forth in their constituencies. How can you possibly go back and talk to your constituents and sell them this idea that, oh yeah, we're relaxing the laws, that protect you and your loved ones in these facilities, especially right now. It's just what we're doing as a government. I mean, you know in your hearts that that isn't working. It's not the right thing to do by any means. And for the health minister to come in here yesterday and try to sell this thing, it just got worse, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, because, this health minister has a very smooth way. I forgot about just, seeing him live in action. A very smooth and easy way about him to misrepresent and to try to confuse an issue that's talking about life and death. When I saw and I heard the health minister trying to defend this yesterday, I was absolutely appalled. And right away, he turns it as well into a political issue, trying to talk about, oh, well, we're trying to protect the long-term care workers on the ground and the nurses and because we care about them. Baloney, Mr. Speaker. Absolute nonsense. A, it's not true because the workers are protected under normal course of law. He's bringing something in here to protect the big extended care type of companies that own these long-term care facilities. That's what he's doing. So there's more questions as we continue to debate this bill, and they're questions that demand an answer. So now we're moving down to 60 minutes to try to get those answers. Let's put the questions on the table and demand that the government answer those questions. Who was lobbying them in regards to this Bill 70? What was the logic and the impetus behind it? Why are they relaxing the laws that protect your loved ones in a assisted living facility here in the province of Alberta? What possible logic could be connected to that? There's lots and lots of things that we need to do, for sure, in our long-term care assisted living facilities. Yes, there is. That's where most of the deaths took place here in the province of Alberta. 1,250 people lost their lives in these facilities. So is the answer to that reducing the legal protections for people in those facilities? Do those two ideas fit together, Mr. Speaker? No, they don't, except in perhaps some diabolical way. So we need to make sure we're debating this. If we're going to talk about long-term care and extended care facilities and protections, we need to talk about how we can make them safer and how we can protect those people and how we can deter any behavior that would compromise the safety of people in those facilities. Those workers work very hard. I know the last 16 months have been very difficult, and we've seen lots of really brave stories coming out of different places. some care facilities have gone out of the way to do a great job. This Bill 70 needs to be debated properly, and this question of closure is the wrong way to go. Thank you.
Honourable members, the Deputy Government House Leader, on behalf of the Government House Leader, has moved Government Motion 89. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered, and a division has been called. Call in the members. You're set. Honorable members, division has been called on Government Motion 89 as proposed by the Honorable the Government House Leader and moved on his behalf the Honorable the Deputy Government House Leader. All those in the chamber and in favor, please rise.
Honorable Mr. Madu, Honorable Minister LaGrange, Mr. Turton, Honorable Mr. Wilson, Mr. Getson, Mr. Singh, Honorable Ms. Pond, Mr. Ellis, Honorable Mrs. Sani, Ms. Goodrich, Honorable Mr. Luan, Ms. Glasgow, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Walker, Mr. Rosewell, Mr. Guthrie, Mr. Stephan, Mr. Williams, Honorable Mr. Glubish.
Honorable members, all those present in the chamber and opposed to Government Motion 89, please rise.
Mr. Egan, Mr. Billis, Mr. Diol, Mr. Shepherd, Ms. Goring, Ms. Sweet.
Members, we will proceed to our remote vote. Those members who are joining us online, please ensure your camera is on. We will proceed by a roll call alphabetically by last name. When your name is called, please unmute your microphone, state only for or against, then remute your microphone. The conclusion of the roll call, I will ensure that any other members who have not had their name called have the opportunity to vote should they wish to do so.
Honorable Mrs. Zahir,
In favor.
Ms. Armstrong-Hominick,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Copping,
In favor.
Ms. Furr,
In favor.
Mr. Horner,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Hunter,
In favor.
Ms. Isaac,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Panda,
In favor.
Mr. Tour,
Yes, in favor.
We did receive your intention, Honorable Mr. Hunter. Are there other members who did not have their name called but who have joined us remotely? If there are, please provide your intentions now. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, total for the motion 28, total against 6.
Honorable members, that motion is carried and so ordered.
Government Bills and Orders for third reading, Bill 56, Local Measures Statutes Amendment Act 2021, debate adjourned.
Honorable members, before the Assembly is Bill 56, and I see the Honorable Member for Edmonton Meadows would like to join the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am honored to have this opportunity once again to rise in the House and speak on behalf of my constituents to the Bill 56, Local Measures Statutes Amendment Act 2021. I've spoken to this bill before, and I will add my comments again. And I would like to also mention that the government hasn't really answered any of the questions that my colleague and the opposition in the House has been raising particular to this bill during the debate. It's very surprising for me personally when I look back and remember the elections in 2019. It was the UCP, it was the Premier. And the Premier's one of the most important promise, and based on that promise, the narrative that the UCP created with regards to the municipal, especially the rural municipal issues on especially increasing rural crime. That was one of the prominent, where they made it big political issue and promised their different approach and promised extra policing and the way the GCP would help those rural municipalities not only control and deal with the growing crime, but also help the municipalities sustain and grow. So when we look at this bill, the mandate of this bill, the content in this bill, and the intentions of the people drafting this bill shows all those promises, all those narratives were false, and the GCP had actually no commitment behind it. And it's even surprising to see that the GCP is still determined, even after having the opposition, not only from the official opposition, but from, across the line from the municipal leaders, the unions, or other nonprofit organizations, and even the Minister of Transportation and Municipalities could not really satisfy the media. And he has to acknowledge. So there are some issues. And those issues those questions need to be answered. And he's worried about it. The questions specifically, they are, attached or involved regarded to this particular bill that we're discussing. And I remember, I'm just actually looking at the statement, statement of the honorable member, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, stating to the media that's quoted by Lisa Johnson in the article on April 16. Municipal Affairs Ministers said at a virtual Alberta Urban Municipalities Association convention Friday that it's a huge issue that cannot be ignored. So when we see here, we don't see that there's any reprimentation, any thought process, any seriousness among the government House members or the GCP House members along those issues. Instead, the government is so adamant and determined to push this bill through this legislature session. So municipalities supposed to receive funding from the government of Alberta to deal with the GCP's so-called narration of growing rural crime, but the government, GCP came in power and did not deliver their promise, and the municipalities ended up raising the property taxes of their citizens to come up with those added costs. So when this bill is introduced in the House, number of municipal leaders said it will not even be feasible or viable for many of those municipalities even to operate or operate number of services. They will have to deal with the options of either letting go number of departments, lay off staffs, or they have no options. So these were the answers. These were the questions actually raised in the House. And these were the questions raised outside the House by those municipal leaders. And the government has not provided any answer, not even one answer to all those questions. And we are still keep actually debating this bill, and the government is not willing to listen to Albertans on this. So the municipalities, specifically the rural municipalities, are already struggling to run their operations. They'll be impacted big time if this bill goes through as it is. And municipality sustainable initiatives are hit big time. More than 1/3 of their fundings is impacted. And the municipal leaders are saying like it is not possible for us with those cuts to even run our operations. And the government is also, they know that their actions have made the lives of the Albertans, specifically living in the rural communities, already harder. They have to pay more to get less. They have to pay to deal with the crime issues in their communities. And they have to come up with more taxes in order to be able to afford the police within their communities. Now, through this bill, the government are going to put more burden on those citizens. So if this bill would be passed, then the cell phone users will pay the more money in fees. So what does CRTC says? 88% of Canadian households have a cell phone, and many households has even more than one. And now, at least the family, average family will pay probably $24, $25 more dollars if they're using the fee. And one of the biggest issue that the municipalities are dealing with, the unpaid taxes by rich, large, multinational companies. The money, the tax money they are not paying or they are walked away with is not even in Alberta. And the government is failed to do their job. And the Minister of Municipalities has actually admitted this in his online convention, Zoom convention, to the Yuma. So when there is this big issue and the communities are going to face drastic impacts of this bill, and the government cabinet members acknowledge all those issues, and in the House, government is still so stubbornly going forward to pass this bill. I would really like to actually quote some of the feedbacks and the views of the community leaders for the record. Barry Morishita is the president of AUMA. He said, and I'll quote, "A lot of unintended consequences here, and that means a lot less people working in Alberta over the next 3 years. Some projects are going to be laid aside. Some infrastructure maintenance is going to go undone." And that was the government that ran the election campaign on the issue of creating jobs, filling the Calgary Tower buildings, and that promised the rural municipalities they will fund municipalities to be more safer than they were. Paul McLachlan, President RMA, Rural Municipalities, and Riva Ponoka County. And I will quote, "In some municipalities, unpaid tax amounts are so high that service levels are being reduced, municipal staff are being laid off, and serious discussions are occurring about whether the municipalities can continue to function." So this is how serious this issue is. This is how this bill is going to impact all those municipalities, and the municipalities and the rural areas that UCP believes that is a stronghold and strong base of their political party. And none of the MLA actually is standing up and even speaking about it. None of the UCP MLAs from all those areas even, having the courage to just even share the views of their community leaders, even, just to represent their views. So the issues they are dealing with will be not only damaging to those rural municipalities, but also will be very adversely impacting for all Alberta. Alberta, that.
Honourable members, Standing Order 29-2A is available. Seeing none, the Honourable Member for Edmonton City Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was appreciating the thoughts from my colleague from Edmonton Meadows on the impact of this legislation on municipalities. It sounded like he had a few thoughts remaining at the end of his time, and I was just interested to hear what his conclusion might be.
Back to 29-2A. The Honourable Member for Edmonton Meadows.
Thank you, Member for the Edmonton City Centre, for giving me the opportunity to conclude my remarks on Bill 56. So it is obvious the community leaders from small municipalities, from rural areas, to urban municipalities, the 2 or 3, 4 big cities, Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Red Deer, and they're all opposing, they're all worrying what could happen to their projects. Their projects been already halted. Green Lines in Calgary did not only see their project as being halted, but it impacted thousands of jobs, thousands of people directly losing their jobs. They were working in that project. And thousands of families go struggling to make their ends meet. And similarly, in Edmonton, the LRT project got a big hit. The city's charter was canceled, and cities were hopeful from this government that the budget will be a bit more kind and they will probably see the support from the province coming to deal with issues like homelessness. But all the directions, all the steps being taken here seems like it's going to push those issues into more challenging ways that will put more people in hardship and probably more people out of their homes. So this is very cruel, I will say. And this is not only the issue of one political stripe. This is not the view of the one city. And this is not of the view of the one civic leader. And I have list of those people and the community leaders, and list goes on. And I wonder, what is wrong with this cabinet? What is the wrong with these government members? They didn't even think once to call back this bill and go back to the municipalities and go back to the municipal leaders. And this is not a political issue. And go back and consult with them and even have an all-party meeting on these issues. The municipalities, they haven't even recovered from the cuts they faced, the historical cuts they faced even under the previous conservative governments. And I know the government house members understand that, because I remember all those members coming from rural municipalities during their maiden speeches, introductions, and these were their issues. And that's what they were talking about. The historic cuts, deteriorating infrastructures in rural communities. And all of a sudden, no one is speaking in the House. So I will urge all House members, please be more serious about it and take your time. Either the government should call this bill back, do not move forward at this time, or the member of this House vote against this bill. Thank you.
Are there members wishing to join the debate? The Honourable Member for Calgary East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this wonderful opportunity today, for allowing me to speak here on the important topic, ensuring changes that will help modernize and align the Local Measures Act with the new 2021 budget. Bill 56, the Local Measures Act amends to align changes to local government fiscal framework, LGFF, and the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, MSI, with Budget 2021. It also will aim to modernize Alberta's 911 technology through important amendments to the Emergency 911 Act. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the Minister of Municipal Affairs for taking the initiative, an important measure to ensure the protection of Albertans are improved and ensuring the MSI and LGFF aligned with the Budget 2021. And would like to extend my appreciation to all Albertans and key stakeholders for listening to the numerous concerns around issues with violent crimes and serious challenges that are faced by our vulnerable population. Madam Speaker, Bill 56 is proposing a number of changes to the Local Measures Act that would ensure Albertans in our local municipalities feel supported and respected. The LGFF will be implemented in 2024-2025 with predictable, stable, and legislated baseline funding of $722 million, which will rise or fall based on provisional revenues, and the Local Measures Act will support Budget 2021 by extending MSI funding to 2023-2024 to provide front-loaded and flexible capital funding for municipalities. MSI funding is condensed over the next 3 years to an average of $722 million per year, as Alberta is ensuring that we live within our means as we face the unprecedented challenges with COVID-19. Madam Speaker, Alberta's government provided $500 million to municipalities under Municipal Stimulus Program in 2020-2021 as part of Alberta's recovery plan, much of which will be spent in 2021. The aim is to have a future balanced budget with an assurance of creating jobs and more businesses in the province. If we continue to follow the path to pursue financially stability with our system, then this will definitely help the province and all Albertans. Madam Speaker, let me be reminded that again our government's platform made a promise to make life better for all Albertans. Domestic violence rates increased during crises like the COVID-19 pandemic. Alberta's government provided an additional $6.1 million to shelters across the province, ensuring supports continue to be safe and accessible. Alberta already has one of the strongest legislation to protect and ensure all Albertans feel protected against crime. Just this year, under the Vital Statistics Act, legislations were made in efforts to ensure criminals do not have the opportunity to change their name. And just last year, Alberta's version of clearance law was introduced to allow vulnerable Albertans who may be at risk for domestic violence to access relevant information about their partner. This legislation, with the changes to the 911 Emergency Act, will increase the reliability of the services being provided by first responders. Madam Speaker, under Bill 56, we are committed to protect the vulnerable Albertans, and with the modernization of legislation like the 911 Emergency Act, that will increase the protection and safety of Albertans who are faced with acts of emergency situations. Madam Speaker, it is finally the time to take action to make the right opportunity to propose amendments to modernize the Emergency 911 Act, which has been neglected for many, many years. These changes will modernize and update the 911 system for the first time in nearly 30 years to ensure Albertans continue to have a safe, reliable services when they call or text 911 during an emergency situation. Once the system upgrades are complete, Albertans will be able to text 911 in situations where they cannot call, which is particularly important and crucial for victims of domestic abuse. First responders will be able to locate people faster. To cover the cost of changes, phone bills will see an increase of the 911 levy of 51 cents more per month, up from 44 cents, effective September 1st, 2021. Many of us already know customers may raise concerns about an increase to cell phone bills, but Albertans should understand the importance of maintaining the Alberta 911 system will support many Albertans facing challenging situations. Madam Speaker, there is a significant risk that Alberta's 911 system will not be able to transition to NG 911 without additional funding, and also the government recognized that. Alberta is experiencing a significant economic downturn from the challenges of the pandemic. Madam Speaker, it is great to know that there will be no direct provincial financial implications to the government to implement these new changes to the Emergency 911 Act. Madam Speaker, these technology upgrades will have nothing to do with the EMS, policing, firefighters, or professions that are related to first responders. It will be simply be only for 911 emergency service system and to help first responders and Albertans with efficacy. These changes will allow the reduction of barriers and will improve the efficiency and will support callers and Albertans to utilize a better service that will work regardless who answers the phone. The federal government, through the Canadian Radio, Television, Telecommunications Commission, CRTS, had mandated that Canada's 911 system be upgraded to next generation 911 NG 911 technology by March 30th, 2024. Madam Speaker, our government will continue to work with other provinces and territories so that the implementation of similar legislation or order be made, ensuring the same goal and purpose would be as well attained. It explains that this will be a step to a better direction and it would be more effective as part of pan-Canadian approach. This is in line with other provinces and is crucial to cover the cost of the system upgrades. For example, Saskatchewan has announced their levy will be $1.88 per month due to differences in provincial systems and has been minimal public pushback to recent 911 levy increase in New Brunswick. Next generation 911 will improve location, correctness of calls to verify a caller's civic address or device location, helping locate callers in rural and remote areas and determine the height of a call. If, for example, someone is calling from a tall building in an urban area, a pin drop will not be required via text because the location will be provided automatically as long as the caller has some phone reception to process the call, which is done through the satellite GPS. Next generation 911 will leverage the growth of broadband in areas underserved by cell phone coverage to make 911 calling much easier. Even in areas with poor cell phone coverage or individuals that are in areas where it has broadband Wi-Fi coverage, then the call will be processed through that network under the modernized system NG911. Again, the 911 system will work better, unified, and will be faster with the modern equipment introduced. Madam Speaker, our communities and Albertans have waited far way too long for the previous government to act. It is finally time to amend and legislate laws that will help Albertans get the support and assistance they deserve. These additions will help communities and individuals that cope with the trauma and help further strengthen the promotion of public safety. The constituents of Calgary East have been eager to see these changes that will ensure and enhance the public safety in our province and community. They have been in careful watch of the security of their communities as criminal activities happen when no one is observing. With these changes, the safety of everyone is strengthened. Madam Speaker, Bill 56 will further strengthen our commitments to help ensure our vulnerable Albertans that are faced with violent crimes are being protected and have access to reliable and efficient services. These changes in this bill are another step to ensure the government is taking actions to help protect families and support Albertans. The utmost duty of our government is to protect citizens and strengthen public safety for all Albertans. It is unfair to the victims of violence to be living in a province that do not have the modernized system to ensure they feel safe. Madam Speaker, we must do everything we can to protect the children and vulnerable Albertans. That is why it is important for this bill to pass, and there have been many groups and stakeholders who have voiced their support on this bill. The government will never stop finding solutions and communicating information that is vital for the resolution of the current situation. I know that this will receive positive remarks from other governments and would likely adopt these changes as we try to work harmoniously together. So, Madam Speaker, I again encourage everyone in this chamber to support this bill and support all individuals that are dealing with the challenges and the families that are affected. Again, I applaud the minister and all the staff and team members that have been involved in crafting of these proposed changes that will ensure the protection of Alberta and will ensure that our vulnerable population is supported and services and technology are continuously being updated to meet the demands of our modern day world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, Standing Order 29 2A is available. I see the Honourable Member for Calgary McCall.
Calgary McCall. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's Calgary McCall. Okay, I heard. Well, I was listening to the member from Calgary East with interest, and member mentioned that there are many stakeholders and many in Calgary who support this bill. So I would like to ask a very simple question to the member, that what I heard from Calgarians, what I heard from the City Council, including the mayor, many councillors, they oppose this bill, the cuts that are proposed through this bill to MSI. So if member would like to share, had he spoken to talk to any councillor or mayor office and if he would like to share that with us, who was the person who was the counselor that he spoke to, who is supporting this bill, that would be great.
Other members wishing to join in on Standing Order 29-2A? Seeing none. Any other members wishing to join the debate? The Honourable Member for Edmonton City Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to stand and speak to Bill 56, the Local Measures Statutes Amendment Act at third reading. Alberta's municipalities have faced incredible challenges under this government. Now, the history of Conservative parties in relationships with municipal governments in the province of Alberta has been a fraught one at best. Under 44 years of the Progressive Conservative Party, we saw increasing arrogance, entitlement, and condescension on the part of the provincial government towards local municipalities, to the point where there was an unspoken expectation that if they wanted to get anything done, they had best cozy up to the governing party of the province. There were many issues that were flagged, in particular the late aughts, I believe around 2008, 2009, recognition of improper donations to the Progressive Conservative Party through municipal officials and others who felt pressure through that system that the only way for them to get things done for the municipality was to play that political game. Now, of course, I think that led to the sweeping change that came into the province in 2015. But it has only taken 2 years for this government to reinstate that same state of play and embrace the same level of arrogance and entitlement that had taken 44 years to build initially. And now we see through this legislation that this government is continuing that pattern of condescension, paternalism, arrogance. To be clear, Madam Speaker, municipalities need to be the partners of the provincial government. That is the expectation of Albertans. That is how we get things done for our communities. But instead, what we have seen is this provincial government has been an impediment to getting things done locally. They have created more difficulties for municipalities in trying to move forward in so many of the initiatives that they have already had underway and been less than helpful. And indeed, in many cases, an additional challenge as they have tried to meet the crises that we have seen in the last couple of years. Indeed, in so many ways, this government has made those crises worse. So one of the key pieces in this legislation, of course, is this government's decision to cut the MSI by 36%. Now, this is funding that municipal governments depend on for many local initiatives, infrastructure, and other work. Now, of course, municipalities have a limited tax base. They have limited revenue options at their disposal to raise the money they need to provide the services and supports that they are expected to by the people they represent. And this provincial government is making that even more difficult. A provincial government that is running a referendum complaining that they do not get their fair share and a fair shake from Ottawa. But in the meantime, is downloading more costs and responsibilities to municipalities at every single turn. That, Madam Speaker, is rank hypocrisy. I know I can speak for myself here in the city of Edmonton, representing Edmonton's downtown. Now, of course, the record for this government so far with the city of Edmonton has been to tear up and throw away the big city charter that they had promised during the last election they would not remove, that they would support. They broke that promise and they tore it up. So here in downtown Edmonton, I know we have seen incredible impact from the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, a situation that was made much worse by this government's insistence on acting last and acting least at every single turn, allowing cases to get far worse than they had to be, and causing far more economic damage by this roller coaster of openings and closings that they put Albertans on. Now, the City of Edmonton, thankfully, has recognized the need to invest and support. Yesterday, they rolled out a brand new downtown vibrancy strategy, which will be investing $5 million into that work in the downtown. And in that report, it talks about how it's essential and important to recognize that the city is one party in this situation, that it requires collaboration at all levels of government to achieve. And what we have with this government instead is that they are cutting 36% of the MSI, those investments that are going from the province to municipalities, a form of, shall we say, provincial equalization, Madam Speaker. Something on which this government, again, is so insistent on fairness. But yet they do not apply that in their own actions, where they have the opportunity. And going back to that downtown vibrancy, they recognize that it is a partnership. But where is this provincial government on the key elements of partnership to address the needs here in my constituency right now? They were nowhere to be seen when the City of Edmonton and the Government of Canada have both stepped up to invest in 210 units of supportive housing, to address the fact that we have hundreds of folks here in my community living houseless on the streets. The government of Alberta, under this premier, is nowhere to be seen. They refuse to step up and play a part, to do their share. We have an overdose crisis happening here on the streets of my community, with businesses and their employees being traumatized by being left unsupported by this government to deal with the impacts of that public health emergency. They are calling for an emergency response plan. What have they gotten from this government? An announcement of a pilot project for nasal naloxone. Now, that's something folks have been calling for. It's a good step. But a pilot project in the midst of a crisis, an emergency, Madam Speaker. And the government playing games with access to one of the key initiatives that has been actually helping address this on the streets through the supervised consumption sites. Disrupting one of the key responses that is helping to ease that pressure here in my community. That is a response from this government where we need partnership and actual collaboration. We have arrogance, entitlement, and a refusal to even engage. And that is what Bill 56 represents. This government continuing to double down on its arrogance, entitlement, and paternalistic approach to municipalities in this province, as evidenced in their constant stalling and attempts to obstruct the Green Line in Calgary, while engaging in doublespeak about how they support it, when they clearly do not, when they're clearly throwing every obstacle they possibly can in the road. Initiatives that could be creating jobs at a time when Albertans badly need them, that would be sparking economic development at a time when we are recovering from an economic crisis due to COVID-19. Breaking their promises. Madam Speaker, this government loves to brag about the promises they kept, but there are some pretty major ones that they have outright broken, and many of them to municipalities. That is not helping families and protecting Albertans, as the member from Calgary East so dutifully read. It is undermining the ability of municipalities who are doing that work, who are closest to the ground, and frankly are spending much more time listening to the people they represent than the members of this government. As we have heard clearly on so many issues, I haven't even started to talk about the economic impacts from this government's healthcare policies as they drive doctors out of the province of Alberta. 1/5 of the doctors in the Chinook healthcare primary care network, 1/5 of the doctors are gone, Madam Speaker. How does that affect the economy in Lethbridge and surrounding communities? That is not helping families and protecting Albertans. And forcing municipalities to pay more for 911 calls is not going to help with the fact that they are lacking primary care. Though the fact that they are undermining the primary care certainly means that probably there will be much more need for those 911 services. So that is why, Madam Speaker, I stand against Bill 56. Against this undermining of our municipalities' ability to provide the services and supports, a bill that is clearly opposed by a vast majority of municipal leaders across the province of Alberta, and which will only do further damage to the ability of our local municipalities to recover from COVID-19, to stimulate their local economies, to build and maintain the infrastructure needed to support their citizens. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, Standing Order 29, 2A is available. I see the Honourable Member for St. Anne Parkland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me just get this mask off here, and hopefully pretty soon, folks, I'm going to be burning that baby this summer when we all get these mask restrictions over and done with. Yeah, so big 3 cheers for that one. So thank you to the member from City Centre. I too have an interest in his constituency. Now, the interesting part of that, Madam Speaker, is that we tend to talk here sometimes in isolation, that we don't understand the connection between rural and urban. And I think the member opposite might also miss some of those relationships between federal, provincial, and municipal jurisdictions, and also the authorities that are granted to municipalities which are actually children of the province in a lot of cases. So he was talking about MSI funding, he was talking about the interactions, kind of a level playing field, how they're partners and those type of things. So I'm not sure if he understands the hierarchy on it, because again, those were children of the province essentially. Those were granted, similar to the education system with the school boards. Now, a lot of these things are taken for granted, that in the case of MSI funding, that this has been around forever, when actually, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, I should say, that's not the case at all. So when I talk to the municipal leaders in my area, the ones that have been around for a long time, that are kind of the mentors and the stalwarts and the people in the area, they tell me how things were before things were really wealthy in the province and before a lot of things were built up in place. And in actuality, the municipalities had to, quite frankly, pay for a lot more themselves. It wasn't the same way it is now. So a lot of the real good leaders in the municipalities, they understand that, and they understand that we're in a time of financial issues. They understand that through COVID and all the events we've taken place in the last time there's a blip on the radar. They also understand and agree, at least in my area, that the 9/11 things that we're putting in place is actually going to be a major benefit to them. Now, in specifics with City Centre, I love the City Centre. Folks down in Chinatown have reached out to me lots, talking about the drug addiction issues, talking about how it's problematic. And it was under the last administration that they didn't get the support and services that they needed. When they've got security issues, when you have folks that are caught up in that addiction cycle, and as an example, starting fires and burning down the Italian bakery when those 2 80-year-old owners were in place, they came to my doorstep to look for help. So when I'm hearing the member from City Centre talk about his area, how he represents, and then expands the wings to the rest of the province and thinks it's all the same, partner, we better be careful when we start throwing stones and glass houses. The relationships that need to be built in that city centre area. I've spoken in this House a number of times with the drug addiction issues in that area. I've asked why the City Council hasn't taken the folks in Chinatown serious. They lobbied against this, they had petitions put in place, and they were basically trumped. I'd asked and asked in this House and never heard a response from the member from that part of why that 3 of these major facilities are all within stone's throw of each other. Now here's the connection to my area. The illicit drug use that's taking place there is also fed. A lot of those substances are cooked out in my area, or it perpetuates the rural crime issues in my area. Where we're on the border of Edmonton, there's a lot of that traffic that ends up down there. So when I start talking to my communities and trying to keep the kids out of harm's way and to keep the gangs and everything out from roaming our areas that require 9/11 services to be updated, quite frankly, because of a lot of this type of work that's taking place, people get it. The folks in Chinatown keep reaching out. I would love to try to get the member, maybe I can facilitate a meeting through you, to the member, with the Chinese business community. You can hear the other side of the coin and why they keep picking up the phone and calling the rural cowboy to come in to try to help in those areas, because what they're seeing keeps falling on deaf ears. So when you start throwing stones, member, please be careful that it also might come bouncing back at you in your own house. Now, as far as the bill itself, I didn't hear a lot of what the member was speaking about, other than the typical talking points about how we're tearing things down, we've got brutal relationships. Here's how relationships work. You can have disagreements, you can have strong-willed opinions, and you can still respect each other. That's how it works with most circumstances. If there's folks that get cross-threaded, if it's a personality conflict, or perhaps even ideologies, might precipitate a lot of these type of interactions. But most of them, you can talk past that. We have our speaking points, we do those things, and here it's set up for that. Out in the real world, when we sit at the tables with our municipalities and we're talking to them, you can work through the sticking points. But there's also friction and rub points between municipalities themselves. Whether it's a city, it's a summer village, or a county, they also have these rub points. And it is always going to come down to one taxpayer, one ratepayer, and how many hands are going in that pocket. There's only so much wealth to go around, and we need to recognize that.
Any members wishing to join the debate? The Honourable Member for Edmonton, Beverly Clareview.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm happy to engage in this debate. Unfortunately, I have extremely limited time due to this government's heavy-handed, undemocratic motion that passed in this chamber to limit debate, which we see time and time again. I rise to speak against this bill. And, you know, to the member who spoke previously, I would love for him to share how many of his rural municipalities in Laxton and Parklands support this bill, because I've heard of none, not a single one. Now, I may be an Edmonton MLA, but I was the former Minister of Municipal Affairs and had an opportunity to sit down with many, many municipalities throughout the province. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that what this bill is doing is continuing to download services onto municipalities while also reducing their ability to pay for those services. Municipalities deliver 90% of the services that their residents depend on a day-to-day basis. 9-0. How much do they have in revenue, Madam Speaker? About 7 cents on the dollar. Their hands are completely tied when it comes to generating revenue in order to deliver the services that businesses, families, and every citizen relies on. This government is legislating cuts to MSI, with no programs in their place. And the reason, well, the municipalities get more money than most other municipalities in other jurisdictions, and therefore we're just going to hack and slash them. Madam Speaker, the fact of the matter is that there is money in the provincial budget. So contrary to the previous member talking about how we're all belt tightening, well, how much tightening happened when this government and this premier gambled $1.3 billion on Donald Trump winning the election? $1.3 billion being injected into our municipalities would help to create economic activity. would create jobs in our municipalities, would help them to diversify, to look at the opportunities that they have, that they know. I have list after list of mayors and councillors, from the presidents of AUMA to the presidents of RMA, the mayors of towns from Cochrane to Calgary to Vulcan to St. Albert to Fort Saskatchewan, who all oppose the cuts that this government is downloading onto them. Now, Madam Speaker, you know, the irony of this is at the same time, this UCP government has increased costs on a number of different areas, from park fees to personal income tax increases by de-indexing, which I love when members stand up and say, we're not increasing personal income taxes. You are, and your leader is on record when he was the head of the Alberta Taxpayers Federation, who screamed about how bracket creep or de-indexing is a form of taxes. Now that he's the Premier of Alberta, somehow, what, he misspoke 10 years ago?
He does that a lot.
He seems to do that a lot. There's other issues that he's now denying he made certain comments on. I won't get into them in this speech, but the fact of the matter is this government has increased costs on Albertans. So when they stand up and say there's only one taxpayer, yeah, you need to get that message. You're increasing costs on Albertans. You're forcing municipalities. In fact, there's one rural municipality that has said, the village of Hythe has, the mayor has said he's actually recommending the dissolution of the municipality because of the cuts they are unable to sustain. Or they have to increase their property taxes by 150%. How many members of the UCP support that? If they vote in favor of this bill, they are supporting massive tax increases on municipalities.
I'm going to find out right now.
Now, municipalities can choose to defer maintenance on their infrastructure. The problem is, and many of them do that as a way to save in this year's budget or next year's budget. But all you're doing is kicking the can further down the road to a point when the repairs on that infrastructure will be significantly higher than if the investments were made in an ongoing period. Our municipalities are who we rely on for our roads, our bridges, which move people, which move goods, which businesses need. But our municipalities need support. They have limited means. This is where the big city charters were negotiated, where cities would participate in revenue. And the model that was brought forward meant that when revenues, government revenues go up, municipalities get more. When government revenues go down, they get less. The two cities understood that if they wanted to participate,
hesitate to interrupt, but pursuant to Standing Order 91, all questions must now be put. On Bill 56, the Local Measures Statute Amendment Act 2021, I must now put the following questions to conclude debate. All those in favor of the bill, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to third reading, please say no. That is carried. A division has been called. All members wishing to join us online, please log in now. Ring the bells. members, a division has been called on Bill 56. All those in the chamber in favor, please stand.
Honorable Mr. Madu, Honorable Mr. Hunter, Honorable Mr. McIver, Honorable Minister LaGrange, Mr. Turton, Honorable Mr. Wilson, Mr. Getson, Mr. Singh, Honorable Ms. Pond, Mr. Newdorf, Honorable Mrs. Sani, Honorable Mr. Schweitzer, Mr. Yao, Mr. Orr, Ms. Rosen, Mrs. Allard, Mr. Walker, Mr. Rosewell, Ms. Goodrich, Mr. Guthrie, Honorable Mr. Luan, Ms. Glasgow, Mr. Stephan, Honorable Mr. Glubish, Mr. Williams.
All those in the chamber opposed to third reading of Bill 56, please stand.
Mr. Sabir, Mr. Diol, Mr. Billis, Mr. Agan, Ms. Sweet, Ms. Goring, Mr. Shepherd.
Now move to those members joining us online. Your name will be called alphabetically by last name. When your name is called, please unmute your mic, state your vote loudly and clearly, remute your mic, and keep your camera on at all times.
Honorable Mrs. Zahir,
In favor.
Ms. Armstrong Hominack,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Copping,
In favor.
Ms. Furr,
In favor.
Mr. Hanson,
In favor.
Mr. Horner,
In favor.
Ms. Isaac,
In favor.
Honorable Mr. Panda,
In favor.
Mr. Tour,
In favor.
Are there any others that wish to vote that have not yet done so? Hearing none.
Madam Speaker, total for the motion 34, total against 7.
Members, that is carried.
Bill 56, Local Measures Statutes of Amendment Act 2021 is now read a third time. Committee of the Whole.
Sorted out. Members, I'd like to call Committee of the Whole to order. Committee of the Whole has under consideration Bill 58, the Freedom to Care Act. There are currently no amendments on the floor. Are there any members that are wishing to join the debate? The Honourable Member for Edmonton Castle Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Seeing that there aren't amendments on the floor at this time, I would like to introduce an amendment.
Members, this will be known as Amendment A5. Honourable Member, please proceed.
Thank you. I would like to move that Bill 58, Freedom to Care Act, be amended by adding the following immediately after Section 5, Sub 4. If an exemption order has been made under subsection 1 in respect of a nonprofit organization, the nonprofit organization must, within 5 business days of the making of that order, provide to all of its employees, volunteers, and clients, A, a copy of the order, and B, an explanation in writing of the effects of the order on the nonprofit organization's I, delivery of its programs or services, and I, employees and volunteers. I am requesting that the Assembly support this amendment because we know that most volunteers are familiar with the rules and parameters of the work that they do, and they're aware of how these rules protect them and the clients that they serve. Bill 58 would allow for exemptions to be given that would change the rules and parameters without the knowledge of the volunteers. To protect their health and safety, all volunteers deserve to know when these exemptions are given and why. This amendment requires that if an exemption is given to a nonprofit organization, they are obligated to provide a copy of the exemption to all employees, volunteers, and clients, along with a written explanation of the effects of the exemption on the delivery of programs or services, employees, and volunteers. And with that, Madam Chair, I would request that everyone support this amendment.
Any other members wishing to speak to Amendment A5? Seeing none, I will call the question on Amendment A5 as moved by the Honourable Member for Edmonton Castle Downs. All those in favour, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. The amendment is defeated. A division has been called. Members wishing to join on, please log in now. Ring the bells. Honourable members, a division has been called on Amendment A5 as moved by the Honourable Member for Edmonton Castle Downs. All those in the chamber in favour, please stand.
Mr. Sabir, Mr. Diol, Mr. Billis, Mr. Agan, Ms. Sweet, Ms. Goring, Mr. Shepherd.
All those opposed in the chamber, please stand.
Honourable Mr. Madu, Honourable Mr. Hunter, Honourable Minister LaGrange, Mr. Turton, Honourable Mr. Wilson, Mr. Getson, Mr. Singh, Honourable Ms. Pon, Mr. Newdorf, Honourable Mrs. Sawney, Honourable Mr. Schweitzer, Mr. Yao, Mr. Orr, Ms. Rosen, Mrs. Allard, Mr. Walker, Mr. Rosewell, Ms. Goodrich, Mr. Guthrie, Mr. Stephan, Honourable Mr. Luan, Mr. Williams, Ms. Glasgow, Honourable Mr. Glubish.
We'll now move to those joining us online. We'll call your name alphabetically by last name. When your name is called, please unmute your mic, state your vote loudly and clearly, remute your mic, and keep your camera on at all times, while members in this chamber remain in their seats silently.
Honourable Mrs. Zahir.
Against.
Ms. Armstrong-Hominack.
Against.
Honourable Mr. Copping.
Against.
Ms. Furr.
Against.
Mr. Gottfried.
Against.
Mr. Hanson.
Against.
Mr. Horner.
Opposed.
Ms. Isaac.
Against.
Honourable Mr. Panda.
Opposed.
Mr. Tour.
Against.
Oh, yes. Is there anyone else wishing to vote that has not yet done so? Hearing none.
Madam Chair, total for the amendment 7, total against 34.
Members, that has been defeated. The committee will now rise and report progress. The Honourable Member for Red Deer South.
Madam Speaker, the Committee of the Whole has had under consideration a certain bill, Bill 58. The committee reports progress on the following bill, Bill 58. Madam Speaker, I wish to table copies of an amendment considered by Committee of the Whole on this date for the official records of the Assembly.
Does the Assembly concur in the report? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. So carried. Honourable members, the House now stands adjourned till 1:30 this afternoon.